Hello, I'm making this video to explain and clarify my recent article, well, the interview that I gave to a freelance journalist that ended up in Fairfax Media's news.com.au, which the headline is "Antifa More Dangerous Than ISIS." I'm making this video to clarify what I meant by that, and also to talk a little bit about my experiences in the radical left and why I'm willing to talk out against them and their willingness to use violence for political means. So, first of all, the context of that quote saying that ISIS is more dangerous, that the far left is more dangerous than ISIS, was in relation to the fact that neo-Marxist ideologies are being taught at universities, and I think they're ripping apart the fabric of society and adding to the political polarization. Okay, it was a comment that was hyperbolic. But I do stand by the fact that I do think that this ideology is a threat to civilization itself if it is left unchecked. So let me explain my views on ideology. Okay, so I was a member of ANTIFA for 4 years. I identified as an anarchist. How I got into anarchism is because I was worried about the Western intervention in Syria around 2012-2011, where Western governments were threatening to intervene Syria. I know that Russian bases had there, and I was very worried about the escalations of a world war, and I was also very worried about the humanitarian costs, which I was right. Hundreds of thousands of people died in that conflict, as it is anyway. So I started going to rallies and stuff because I believed that I needed to do something to speak out against the possibility of a Western intervention. And I started hanging around radical left-wingers when I was around Newtown in the inner west. And these were people who were willing to talk about politics while my normal peer group weren't so interested. They're like, oh, here goes Shane ranting again. And slowly and surely I came to believe that the solution and the cause, first of all, I believe that the causes of war had to do with these systems like capitalism and the patriarchy and white supremacy and colonialism and all these sort of buzzwords. And that if I really wanted to stop those wars, I needed to, absorb this sort of neo-Marxist identity politics mindset. And then I was hanging around anarchists, and I fell into an echo chamber, and I became ideologically possessed. Ideological possession is a very seductive thing. Okay, for example, why do people become neo-Nazis? Why did people become Nazis? There's an incentive for them to believe that, okay? When you blame the Jews for all your problems, it stops you from having to blame yourself, okay? Drugs and alcohol, they help you dissociate from the pains of your life. I feel that ideology helps you do that as well. And, for example, oh, I got a parking ticket. It's not my fault that I didn't read the sign properly. It's the Jews, all right? Oh, I was late for work. I've spoken to crazy people who have anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that the Jews run the world. And after a while, you realize that Jews are a code word for their character flaws. And then, so I start playing along and I go, yeah, I'm always late for everything. Yeah, I've got heaps of Jews that I need to sort out, right? And I also believe that Marxism does the same thing in a different way. I believe that fascism and neo-Nazism is for people with IQs below 100, and Marxism is very similar, but for people with IQs above 100. So Marxism splits the world into oppressed and oppressors. There's the ruling class, the capitalists, and then the working class, and they're pitted against each other in a power. There's no symbiotic relationship between the two. There's no way people can move up based on merit. Everything is oppression. And that the working class has to overpower the ruling class and create a democratic utopia. It's like heaven, right? It's the Marxist version of heaven, and so everything you do is justified because you'll create heaven. So if you're an asshole, well, first of all, neo-Marxism is basically that idea: the oppressed and oppressors split into race and gender, as well as the class divide. So white people versus blacks, and straight people versus gays, and men versus women, and that these groups are in a power struggle, and that all the problems of any individual is because of the oppressor group. Every explanation is oppression. So there's an incentive to believe in that because you're no longer responsible for your circumstances. It's the patriarchy. I'd love to see a feminist headline that says, woman is where she is in her career, not because of oppression, but because she's shit at her job. Okay, there's no emphasis on personal responsibility. That's a big part of this seductive. Why these ideologies are seductive, because you get to defer that pain, and you also get certainty. You are in a power struggle, in a war. You have a cause. You know, for instance, I know a lot of people who are very worked up about the Israel-Palestine conflict, but you know, lady, you live in Brisbane. Is that your biggest concern right now? You know, or are you using that cause as a way to procrastinate from your personal problems? Are there bigger issues facing you that maybe you should attend to that come before the Israel and Palestine conflict you keep talking about? You know, but there's a community and a crowd that will validate you for that cause, and that makes you feel good, it makes you believe that you're moral, it makes you feel that you're relating to a greater good without having to do the hard work of being good in your personal sphere. You know, where's the movement to end the conflict between you and your family members, you and your brother? Where's there's no group of people holding up placards that say, end the conflict between you and your brother. You know, organize your life, clean your room. There's no movement for that, right? Anyway, so this neo-Marxist mindset means that all these radical left-wingers believe they're in a power struggle, and they see because of postmodernism as well, that postmodernism is basically this idea that reality is subjective, and that and then they fall back. That's true, and then they fall back, but it's not that subjective. I mean, you know, if someone's hit by a car, you're yelling out for a doctor. You're not yelling out for a postmodernist philosopher, right? Because there is an objective reality. I don't think everything's completely subjective, but I do think people have an element of subjectivity in their perception. That's true. But what they do is they fall back on their neo-Marxist position, and they go, okay, that person's opinion is only their opinion because they're a white male, and they're only a avatar for their group. Right? So they feel justified in silencing and attacking people because they don't believe in debate or free speech, because they believe that everyone's point of view is only a replication of their power position. And they're also incredibly bigoted, because if a black person or a woman disagrees with their neo-Marxist identity politics, all of a sudden that person is a Uncle Tom or has ingrained misogyny, which I think it's incredibly sexist and bigoted to think that black people, because of their identity, or women because of their gender, have to agree with you. Okay, perhaps you're the ones who are fucking bigoted. Okay, so what these people do is they're completely racist and sexist in their behavior. They become irrationally resentful to people they think are in the oppressor group, and they become sycophantic towards people they think are oppressed. Right? They suck up to them in a disgusting way, and that's not honest, and that's not them as an individual. That's not treating them as a person. That's not transcending racism or sexism. That's replicating it in another direction, and then quite frankly, that's disgusting. Right? So I was a member of ANTIFA, and I believed this ideology. I was going around organizing this. We need to shut down the fascists. We need to stop them. This was the rhetoric, and it gave my life purpose. I had a clear vision. I thought I was being more moral than everyone else, and it was a way for me to avoid taking care of the things I should have been focusing on, like my family, my livelihood, and the things that would potentially make the world a much better place than focusing on a group of fringe lunatics on the right. The other thing about the whole fascism thing, anti-fascism thing. So I was protesting these. The Reclaim Australia rally in Brisbane, for example. I organised that. I had meetings 3 months out from there. We maybe, you know, a couple meetings every month, and, you know, we'd all kind of organise tasks and stuff, and we're working with anarchists and Marxists, right? And, you know, and so we had this rally and stuff, but at the end of the day, we probably draw more attention to the message of Reclaim Australia if we didn't. And when we went there, we were aggressive. We were only there to yell at them and try and silence. You know, and I don't think it wasn't a very practical tactic, because Marxists and anarchists I feel are just Marxists who pretend they're not communists because they go, oh, we don't believe in the state, but we'll act exactly the same. Woo! And so basically there was a Marxist called, a Marxist professor who years ago, before Reclaim Australia, went out when there was a handful of people from the Australia Defence League who had very similar politics to Reclaim Australia, sort of reactionary, anti-Islam, anti-Muslim politics. You know, I do think there's a conversation to be had about radical Islam and about Islam's relationship with Western culture. I do think there's a conversation to be had, but I do think that these right-wing weirdos go about it in an unproductive way. Anyway, so he went there and he handed out flyers and arguments and had a conversation with these 20 people. Very brave thing to do. I think that's a lot braver than wearing a mask and being in a mob and trying to attack someone when they're by themselves. I think that's cowardly and lazy, to be honest. But anyway, and guess what happened when he did that? those people kind of went, oh, I guess you have a point, and they went away, and they didn't have another rally for another fucking 5 years. Okay? It's a lot more effective to try and debate people than try and silence them and attack them with violence. Okay? There's a thing called the There's a thing called the Streisand effect, right? So basically, it's coined after when Barbra Streisand tried to tell a photojournalist not to show her location. And on the website he uploaded it, there was only maybe 50 views on that website. When she tried to make him take it down, it ended up causing a controversy, which meant that it had millions of views. So she ended up making the problem she was trying to stop. I believe that is what Antifa is doing. When people who are maybe confused and are leading to the right or whatever start seeing left-wing people wearing masks attacking people on the fucking street, their response is to go, oh, well, we'll get violent then. You know, I believe the True Blue Crew, which was a right-wing group that, you know, started wearing masks and hoodies just like Antifa, I believe that was a right-wing reaction to Antifa's violence against Reclaim Australia. I don't believe that you have the right to crush people for their opinion. Okay, people can have bigoted opinions. People have the right to be fucking idiots, alright? I don't agree with the bigotry of the left, but I'm not gonna start attacking them physically. You know, I'm gonna do the higher road, which requires a hell of a lot more effort, and ultimately I think is a lot more effective, which is speaking out about why they're wrong. Okay? Because, look, my generation is a generation that's never not had freedom of speech or democracy. So we don't know what the fuck we're losing. We don't realize that our redefined ideas of racism, and this is what the neo-Marxists do, they redefine what racism is. You know, there's heaps of videos online, and I'll put it in the link, of people, you know, attacking people just for the crime of wearing dreadlocks because it was cultural appropriation. They have the right to, they think they have the right to assault people in some cases.
You're saying that I can't have a hairstyle because of your culture? Why?
Because it's my culture. Do you know what belongs to me?
Do you know it was in Egyptian culture? Are you Egyptian? Nah, bro, you're not.
Are you Egyptian?
No, but doesn't matter.
Wait, where's Egypt? Tell me.
You know what, girl?
Where's Egypt?
Dude, go. You have no right to tell me what I can read. Huh?
Where's Egypt?
Yo, girl, stop touching me right now.
Yo, girl, stop touching me right now. Come back.
Get off of me.
Come back, come back, come back. You put your hands on me, we'll learn.
Well, what? Like, you're gonna make some shit because of what the hair I have? That's no reason, yo. I don't need your disrespect. I don't need your disrespect.
Why are you filming this?
Just for everyone's safety.
Right? They redefine racism and sexism, mainstream values. Luckily, over thousands of years, I don't know how many centuries it took for it to be a mainstream value to make racism and sexism a taboo. Right? That is a mainstream value. There are laws against that. But these people, they redefine what constitutes racism and sexism in order to get unearned sympathy, power, and to have a unearned moral superiority. And I think the way they redefine these terms is actually disgusting because they're cannibalizing the social fabric. They're watering it down. It's the boy who called wolf effect. You know, and that's why I'm speaking up against the radical left. I had a false rape accusation in the Antifa cult, okay? And I went out with that person another year after they made that false rape accusation, okay? And because they redefined what rape is. Basically, because she felt she couldn't have... She felt like, after the fact, after I broke up with her, she felt like she couldn't say no when we were making out that led to sex. And that is somehow rape. Because feminism is teaching women that they have no personal responsibility. And that if a guy feels uncomfortable when it escalates towards sex and he doesn't say no, then he isn't raped because he's a guy. Even though that happened to me in that relationship. Anyway... I went out with her for another year. She went to my family home. I went to hers after this false rape accusation. And I stayed in this fucking cult. And because she had borderline personality disorder, she would break up with me periodically and get back with me all the time. Because that's how borderline personality disorder works. And the cult would play this interesting cognitive dissonance game where one moment I would be their friend because I was useful to them. Because I was the only one who fucking pulled my finger out of my fucking ass. I wasn't sitting there in the squat drinking goon all the time pontificating about how morally superior I am to the rest of society that actually has fucking jobs, you know. Yeah, I went out with her for a year and the relationship ended when she left to go to the UK, and it was only after I decided I wasn't going to move to the UK to be with her that she started bringing up these aspersions and smears again. She sent out a letter to about 150 people that doesn't even... that people actually read and said, this doesn't even read as any Where's the rape account in here? There's just like vague stuff, and then she goes on about character attacks because, you know, oh, he said mean things, oh, he was controlling. I wasn't controlling to that person. Okay, that person I helped when they decided they wanted to become a sex worker. I drove them so they could pick up their shoes and drove them to and from work while they had multiple accounts on multiple dating profiles. I was absolutely the definition of a non-controlling boyfriend. Okay, I was getting this person breakfast and bed most fucking days. Anyway, that's beside the point. And I'm speaking about that now because I know that the radical left will use that as character attacks, and I'm willing to defend myself verbally. Here's a screenshot of someone who's messaged one of the pages that shared my videos, who's talking about Shane didn't do the accountability process for his sexual assault. Yeah, because a bunch of people on the fucking dole with no qualifications, with no specialization in psychology or dealing with any people with trauma who've gone through rape, think it's a fantastic idea to take a rape victim and a rapist and do a DIY accountability process. Thank God she wasn't fucking raped. You're the people who don't take rape seriously. You're the people who think you can redefine rape as a situation where a man is drunk, a woman is drunk, because she's the woman and she was drunk, she couldn't give active consent, so that's now rape. You people are redefining what racism and sexism is, and even fucking rape, right? You guys are that's a despicable act, right? You guys redefine that. And I feel the reason they redefine these things is because they want to feel like that, oh, racism, look, it's out there. Oh, I'm the victim of a microaggression. Yes, a white person asked a black person where they're from. The black person said Sydney, and then the white person said, where are you really from? And, oh, that's racism apparently now. Everything is assumed in its worst intention because they only have one causal explanation for all phenomena, and that is oppression, right? They see everything as oppression, all right? I'm speaking out the way I am against the radical left because I feel they're doing massive damage. I think their victimhood mentality that they sell to people is damaging them. I'll give you an example, okay? A feminist comedian came up from Melbourne, went to Brisbane, performed in the main comedy club in Brisbane. She bombed, and she came off stage. She said, it's because they don't want to hear a woman. Another female comedian gets up there who, when they started comedy, they had a Singaporean accent, okay? They're playing to a mainstream pub crowd Queensland audience. Over 7 years, they're able to transcend those hurdles, and they fucking killed at the same comedy club. Okay, maybe the explanation wasn't because it was sexism and oppression. Maybe it was because you weren't able to do the job. Okay, maybe when you constantly defer responsibility and you victimize yourself, you don't learn the lessons you need to improve your character and move forward and learn the lessons that you need to. I feel the left is making people disempowered by doing this. I feel that their identity politics is racist and sexist. I feel that they're authoritarian. I feel that people need to go read up on these people. I'm happy to answer anyone's questions about the radical left, as long as they're civil. I will get so many character attacks and smears for speaking up against the radical right, just like I did when I spoke up against the radical right, okay? Here's some footage of the way that they portrayed me as a serial stalker and a murderer, like I was going to go murder Pauline Hanson. All right, they use weapons of the weak, like character attacks and smears. Okay, I've got a whole bunch of ex-cult members who also had abusive dynamics within this cult who are happy to speak out against these people. Antifa, your time is over. I'm not scared of you. I wasn't scared of the radical right. Okay, I see that Slack Bastard has shared the news article where I spoke up. Okay, and no doubtably that's attracted hundreds. Not hundreds, but plenty of people to come to my page to come have their turn at denouncing me for being an evil person. Like automatically, I don't care about racism and sexism. I care about racism and sexism. And the reason that I'm speaking up against Antifa and the radical left is because you're redefining it, and I feel that is racist and sexist. You're using those serious issues in order to further your political cause. Disgraceful. Disgraceful behavior. Okay? And I wasn't scared of the neo-Nazis. I'm not scared of the radical left. I will continue to speak out the way I am because I believe it is a path to non-violence. I believe that debate and free inquiry transcend your fucking feelings. So send me a message, ask me a legitimate question, I will respond to it. I will respond to it if it's civil. Enough with the character attacks. Enough with the lazy smears. Be fucking adults and defend your ideas. Don't just attack someone who has a different idea. For fuck's sake, grow up, you people. Okay, part of the reason that's got me out of the cult was listening to the works of Jordan Peterson talking about ideology and reading a book called You Are Now Less Dumb that talks about our cognitive biases and the way that our brain works. I recommend that this is a starting place for people who are also maybe looking to leave the radical left or are also interested in these phenomena. Thank you very much for listening. I'm not scared of you people. Go fuck yourselves. Hello, it's been a few hours since my last recording and I'm very tired, but I wanted to add on some stuff to the last video. Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, in terms of my politics and stuff, I have a lot of left-wing sympathies, and you know, I'm probably left of center if anything, and I hope that a lot of people on the left will start speaking out against the obsessive use of shaming and as a tactic to try and silence people who you know, people might disagree with, and also the more militant, violent shit that happens on the radical left. And that, you know, like there's sort of student unions in universities and anarchists and communists and all that kind of stuff, which make up ANTIFA. And because I think these people are making us all dumber. I feel society gets better when people actually take the time to read, think about what they believe in, and argue it in a way that can at least get heard by someone and allow someone to respond, rather than just running around, not listening to anyone, just repeating rhetoric in an echo chamber, and then having people who disagree with you outside of the echo chamber, and then you start, you're a piece of shit, you're a racist, you're a sexist, and then even feeling justified in assaulting them based on your subjective idea. Yeah, people say bigoted shit, you turn away, you walk away, you go, that's gross, I don't want to hear it, right? You know, but people are shaming people and using violence when people aren't bigots, and that is fucking that is dangerous. You know, it's quite concerning. It's quite concerning. You know, people. You know, that the dreadlock dude is just one example of so many ways. You know, it's and even inside the left, they're incredibly cannibalistic. They're incredibly cannibalistic. Like, you know, just one example. So this Black Rose Anarchist Bookshop, a place that I got radicalized in, right? So it was a bunch of anarchists, and they would have these collective meetings. There was a collective that would sort of maintain whose dog would pay for the rent and the fucking thing, right? Or how many drinks we sold in our safe space, because alcohol and safety makes sense. And they would have these meetings, and yeah, there was an event away from this that were involving two people who weren't necessarily part of this group, but who were also on the radical left. One person who I think was one of the better people in that scene, who, you know, put a lot of effort into campaigning for the gay marriage stuff long before it was in the public discourse, and had spent 10 years doing so. He was at an event, and another person who identified as a transgendered indigenous blind person. I'm not making that up, and it's a lot of identity labels, right? And this is the thing, right? So someone had an epileptic fit at that party, and instead of negotiating who, you know, whether to call the ambulance or not, it turned into an argument, because one person was like, I'll call an ambo, the other person was like, no, don't, because apparently if sometimes people do have epilepsy, they don't want to be sent to hospital because they will wake up in 15 minutes and then they've lost heaps of their time, right? Instead of two adults having a conversation, that it turned into, he's a racist, he's a transphobe, he's a homophobe, he's a bigot, and this person got like demonized in this. They would have collective meetings and stuff, and that person would have slander against them in this little sub-community, and that person wasn't allowed a right to reply. He wasn't allowed to go to one of these meetings and say his side of the story, because they didn't want to give a platform to a bully. Okay, this is the level of subjectivity these people are using, and when they decide who can speak, when to shame someone into silence, when to assault someone. Alright? This is the fucking mindset of these people, and I'm happy to expose them, you know? I thought I was doing good, you know, trying to battle against the neo-Nazis and stuff, and obviously I still find fascism disgusting, but I also find that Stalinism is disgusting, and this is what it is. It's fucking crazy Marxist shit, and they're behaving like a bunch of fucking Maoist Stalinists, you know. And a lot of these people, they live in a utopia, a fantasy world that, you know, some of the people that were hanging around Antifa, I think North Korea is some utopia, and the anarchists would kind of tolerate them, even though they're meant to be, you know, anarchists and hate communists or whatever. But they'll tolerate them because they were useful in attacking the enemy, you know, the bad crazy fascists out there who are totally going to take over society any second now, who, you know, their own groups fall, the far right fall apart, man, like, because they're fuckwits. But yeah, so my life is pretty intense. You know, I'm going to keep fucking talking about this shit, but it's not just about this, you know what I mean? It's about ideology more general. It's about the way our brains work. It's about the beauty and the strength of freedom of speech and the discourse when ideas... Because when you're arguing and debating with someone, if you're making the effort to inform yourself and they're making the effort, then, you know, you can work together. You can help sharpen each other so you have a better worldview and you think more accurately, and you can consider multiple positions of what's going on in reality, rather than just one simple narrative that you just copy and paste forever, you know. And that's what I'm here to promote, and that's what I'm going to do. And hate is going to hate. So, you know, I'm still political. I still care about a lot of the things that I did when I was an anarchist. You know, I just see that the world is a lot more complicated, and that these things require more complicated solutions than just going, and the patriarchy. Yeah, let's just shout that forever and watch society transform into magical world, you know. You know, here's an idea. Maybe be the change you want to see in the world, rather than shaming other people to be the change you want to see in the world. Okay? Okay? Think about that. Go think about that, lefties.